for me, a real epiphany when I was 16 was watching Film on 4 on a Thursday. I was working by that stage. I left school when I was 16 initially, and used to enjoy Thursday nights with a gin, even at 16. Please don't tell my mum. And one day I just happened to stumble across a film called My Beautiful Laundrette. And I never heard of this film, didn't know anything about it, and just started watching it. And it was set in South London in the 1980s. And it was about a laundrette and taking over a business. But the main story was a gay love story, as I learned very quickly, about for two young men who had known each other at school and had been estranged owing to racial tensions in the 80s, and then had haphazardly happened to meet in the street one night years later. Well, a couple of years later, they're in their 20s by this stage, or upper teens, something like that. Anyway, long story short, they start working on a laundrette together. One of them is a white chap who has been homeless. The other person is an Asian gentleman. And for about half of the film, they're just friends. They're just talking about the experiences they'd shared, the racism that they'd endured, or one of them being obviously I think then a skinhead. And they start working on the laundrette, start making some money, and they're having a conversation in the street. And one of the parts, which is played by Daniel Day-Lewis, he announces a laundrette just like the Ritz, and he goes in for a hug and he kisses his partner, I can't remember the actor's name, on the lips, and they have a full-on snog. And for me, that was the first time I'd ever seen any expression or of affection, or two people same sex kissing or anything like that. And at the time I was in the closet, although I obviously knew that I was gay, and for me it was a massive revelation, and I was slightly shocked but also intrigued and fascinated. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror thinking, wow, this is fantastic, quite erotic as well, I have to say, but in a beautiful way. And then the story ran on, and there was sort of scenes of a sexual nature. I mean, not too graphic, but kind of done in a very sympathetic way. And I just remember thinking, well, that's the first time I've seen something that's positive. That's the first time I've seen a story about two men, or even if it were two women, whatever, being in love, and it's not in a negative, stereotypical Mr. Humphreys kind of way. And I think the fact that it was also married up with the whole racial tensions of the 1980s was particularly interesting. Especially, it was often taken from the perspective of immigrants coming to Britain probably in the 60s and developing a life and then making quite a lot of money, and then regarding some of the white British people with not disdain exactly, but just looking at the way they had lived their lives and perhaps possibly failed, and were therefore very jealous or envious of the life that Asian people had attained. And they were talking about Mrs. Thatcher quite a bit, and about milking the system, and how Pakistan and other places had been sodomized by religion. I remember that quote directly, which I thought was beautiful. And they were obviously talking about making money quite a bit. But the main theme, apart from greed and capitalism, was just same-sex love, which was beautiful.